And how you doing today, Mike?
Doing well. How are you?
Man, it is awesome. The all the sports world has not been shut down because of the coronavirus. Just 95% of it. So NFL free agency is obviously still happening here, and I know you couldn't be much more excited about it being a Minnesota Vikings fan, right?
Well, I don't know if I'd go that far.
Well, it's the only sports that we have right now, and NFL free agency is kicking off with a bang here. And you are a Minnesota's Vikings fans, diehard. So first thing I gotta ask you, man, is the Kirk Cousins 2-year extension worth $66 million, giving him a 3-year $96 million left on his contract. If you were the owner slash GM of the Minnesota Vikings, would you have signed Kirk Cousins to this deal?
I think part of it is they had to. They've made two moves already today. They franchise tagged Anthony Harris for $12.7 million. They signed CJ Ham to a 4-year, $12 million. We did have about $20 million in cap space by releasing Linval Joseph and Xavier Rhodes. So we couldn't have necessarily done both of those today without the restructure. Counting next year's salary from Cousins' old deal, which was, like you said, $96 million, with the 61 guaranteed at signing. He gets 35 mil guaranteed for injury, but the deal converts to a fully guaranteed beginning next year. So they're probably not going to cut him after one season and still owe him 61 mil. So it's effectively still a fully guaranteed contract.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but the question that has to arise here is, can the Vikings win with Kirk Cousins? Yes, I know they went 10-6 last year, finishing second in the division, but long term, for the next 3 years, let's consider that long term. Are the Minnesota Vikings Super Bowl contenders with Kirk Cousins as their quarterback?
Well, we're going to be a much different team this year. I think we did prove last year by going into New Orleans and beating the Saints in a playoff game that we can win with him, yes. But it really depends on, fortifying our offensive line. He was an MVP candidate last year, for a short amount of time. He's a really good quarterback when he has time. But in the NFL, as we can see, that doesn't rarely happen. So I guess we'll see. Our defense is going to be a full, kind of revamped D. So I don't know if we'll be a top 5, top 10 defense this year. It's going to be a different year from a Vikings fan.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier in our conversation here that they did release Xavier Rhodes. I should say, me being a Kansas City Chiefs fan, when they released Eric Perry, I was heartbroken, upset, kind of just mad at the world. How do you feel like about the Vikings releasing him?
Oh, I love it. The roads are open now.
So
I was a huge Xavier fan, early on. I'm a Florida State guy. So when we drafted him, he was one of the best cornerbacks in the league, but he's fallen off. He's not the same player that he once was. He's getting penalized, one of the most out of any cornerback in the league. And, I was extremely happy and not surprised that we got rid of him.
do you think they could have signed and traded him and got something out of him, or just flat out release him was the best option?
No, releasing was the best option, again, because with the little amount of cap space that the Vikings have, by releasing him and Linval, we have the opportunity to go after those players and re-sign them to a new deal if other teams don't go after them, which I would assume they will. But as far as the Vikings are concerned, we're done.
Yeah, so as far as free agency goes, free agency is going to be coming in full swing here in about roughly 24 hours. Wednesday at 4 p.m., I think, is when free agency officially starts in the NFL and the offseason really gets underway. And like all the speculations that we see can be official. What do the Vikings what is their biggest need, you think, in free agency? Do they go after a safety? Do they go after some linemen, some wide receivers? What is their biggest needs in the Minnesota Viking land?
Well, as you mentioned, safety was a big need, but with franchise taking Anthony Harris, I believe 12.75 mil with Harry the Hitman is at 10 mil this year. So we're at, 20 $22.75 million in safeties, which is pretty expensive.
Right.
But with no cornerbacks really going to be on roster besides some late round picks from last year and such, I could see that. I don't see the Vikings having a lot of money to play around with in free agency. It's definitely going to be probably a third wave type deal and getting some people to smaller contracts. We'll see as free agency moves forward how much availability and cap space we're going to have. Offensive line is obviously a huge need. I think a lot of that Rick Spielman addresses in this coming up draft. He's been great in the past with drafting players. Brian O'Neill was a second round pick a couple years ago, who's our starting right tackle. I think we do have some good draft picks to be able to find some starters. Last year we drafted a guy at guard. Of course, I forget his name right now, who I think is going to be fighting for a starting role. So offensive line is huge. This draft is going to be a big one for us because we're losing a lot of big name players for the Vikings this year.
So let's kind of fast forward to the draft here. Who do you think, what is the biggest position you guys have to do well in the draft this year? Is it on the offensive side or the defensive side to start out here? What's your biggest draft needs?
Well, I think we're going to probably get a cornerback at some point, if not two. If history repeats itself, Mike Zimmer's a wizard when it comes to working with these guys. We can get a cornerback in the 6th, 7th round, even an undrafted free agent, and really mold them. The trouble is we don't have a lot of time to work with these guys. We need them to compete right away. I've been saying all along, even with the signing of Kirk Cousins, I really want to go after a quarterback in the 2nd or 3rd round. Jalen Hurts, I've really been pushing for. Obviously, the Vikings don't listen to me. I think he would be great even sitting for a couple years. The thing with the Cousins deal, and this I don't believe will happen, but it is something to keep your eye out on. The Niners can get rid of Jimmy G. His salary isn't guaranteed until April 1st. If he's released prior to June 1st, they'd save $22.4 million in cap. And Kyle Shanahan is obsessed with Kirk Cousins. I mean, he was going after him hard even after they got Jimmy G.
Right.
And, would give a limb to have him on the team. Now, do I know if that'll happen or not? No, but I think getting this contract extension done with Cousins and having, a contract in hand that's more than 1 year is easier to be able to trade him. So it wouldn't be a straight up for Jimmy G. They could just release him altogether and save in cap relief, and then the Vikings could go young at quarterback and kind of go from there. So we'll see, I guess. But I still think they should get a quarterback of the future now, whether that's to sit behind him for a couple years, and a guy like Jalen Hurts is a proven winner and a gamer, and I'd love to have him in purple.
Yeah, I was listening to the Twist, I believe it was a couple weeks ago, when you and your two other co-hosts were kind of really going in on this. I forget the Packers guy's name, but he was not.
Yeah, Green Bay Greg.
Yeah, he was not sold on Kirk Cousins whatsoever. So, do you think Jalen Hurts will fall to the Vikings in like a 2nd round pick, or do you have to jump up and take him in the first round?
Well, I've said I'd like to take him in the 1st. I don't see them doing that now, mostly because you get that 5th-year option, and especially if you're going to have him sit behind Kirk for a couple years, you get that option. He'll be starting by then, and then you work out a new contract moving forward. I know Green Bay Greg is dancing in his cheese head and his kilt right now because he's loving this contract and probably can't wait till our show starts, to get into it. But again, it's something that we had to do. Originally, I didn't think we needed to do, but as stuff is unfolded today and some of the franchise tag and the CJ Ham, which is a quiet signing, but a good one for the Minnesota Vikings, it just, that freed up $10 million in cap space with the restructure of his contract.
Yeah, plus the additional $10 million from the CBA as well added to the salary cap as well. So you got a little bit extra money to play with there as well, which is, I'm sure, for you is exciting. And as most teams across the team or across the league, it is exciting. That means they can pay their quarterback's $140 million instead of $130 million. But I digress on that a little bit. So I am looking at the opponents for the 2020 season for the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, you obviously play your division foes home and away. But like at home here, you got the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Titans, Falcons, Panthers, and Cowboys. And then on the road, you got the Texans, Colts, Seahawks, Buccaneers, and then the Seahawks as well. You guys went 10-6 last year. Like, I know this is way too early. What do you see your schedule or your record being next year?
Oh, probably more. Let's run through them game by game, and I'll give you a win-loss.
Okay, so we'll start with the home schedule here. You have the Bears at home.
Win.
Lions.
Win.
Packers.
At home, win.
Jacksonville Jaguars. Yeah, these are all at home for the first 8. Jacksonville Jaguars.
Win.
Titans.
Win.
Falcons.
Win.
Panthers.
Win.
Dallas Cowboys.
We'll go loss. We'll go 7-1 at home.
7-1 at home.
And I think we can beat them because we did beat them at their home last year. Right. But
yeah, the Cowboys were going to be a totally different team, though. I had them going 13-3 last year in the preseason. Clearly, that did not happen. They're going to be a below 500 team this year. I think so. That'd be kind of an upset if
they have a lot of weapons, but we're a very much different team at home than we are away.
Right.
And that's not a horrible, whether it's a loss to I hate to say it, but the Packers or, it gives me some wiggle room. But I think we have a strong home record next year, so I'd take a 7-1 at home.
Just as long as none of those games are on primetime, you guys will be A-okay.
Oh, yeah.
Now, looking at the opponents on the road here, you had the Bears on the road.
Yep. So 8-1.
Lions.
9-1.
Packers.
We'll go 9-2.
Okay, so 1 loss in division. That is a stretch going from 10-6, second in division last year now.
Yeah, well, we're looking at the Bears possibly signing Teddy Bridgewater, so they're not getting, much of an upgrade at quarterback. They're not going to be the same team.
Shots fired.
I can easily say that I think we'll take both games from Detroit and Chicago.
Okay, well, let's touch on the Detroit Lions here a little bit. Yes, you should hate the Detroit Lions being a division foe there. Should the Lions trade Matthew Stafford and get a quarterback like Jalen Hurts?
Well, I think they could probably get him regardless of trading Stafford. I know there was rumblings about a month ago of them possibly doing it. I don't think they'll get rid of him. I think they'll also be in a position like the Vikings where they could, with the second round pick. I don't know if they would reach as far as a first round pick. Stafford's probably got 3 to 5 years left, depending on his health.
Right.
I sure hope they don't get Jalen Hurts because that's who I'm trying to get.
Right. So right now you have your team going about 8-2, if I'm not mistaken.
9-2, I believe.
9-2. Okay. So next up you have the Houston Texans on the road.
I probably would have gave that to the Texans, but it looks like they've already made a deal today that makes their team worse. So I'm probably going to take the Vikings
for Johnson, which is a big trade there. So then you got
unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, Hopkins must have not have been happy there. I mean, you do not let a talent like that go for a running back. So, but
he's a top 5 receiver for a running back who could barely crack the roster in Arizona. Right. So yeah,
but whatever. We digress on that one a little bit. Indianapolis Colts.
Ooh, they're a tough. I'm going to take a loss there. I think they probably get Phillip Rivers. I think we absolutely can beat them, but they have a tough defense. We'll just take a loss there.
The Colts at home are tough. Period. I don't care if you're the Super Bowl champs or not. Like they're tough. Next up, you have the Saints on the road as well.
We're going to lose there too.
And Buccaneers.
Win.
And then Seahawks.
Loss.
So you have about 11-5 record if my math is correct there, give or take. So better than last season. A game better. I mean, losing only 1 game in the division will give you division championship, so automatic playoff bid there. So now let's say the playoffs do expand to 7 teams like they are discussing here. Do the Vikings get a first round bye in the playoffs?
Well, what's different with the new CBA is only 2 teams are going to get buys rather than 4. So I don't think the Vikings are going to end up with the best record in the NFC and be able to get that bye. Even if we are division winners, it's going to be best record in the NFC, and I don't think 11-5 is probably going to be good enough for a bye.
Just off the top of your head, what do you think the NFC best record win loss record is going to be? 12-4, 13-3.
Yeah, I'd probably say 13-3. I think the Niners have a good shot at, being pretty much the same team, if not even a little bit better. That defense is stacked, and I don't see them digressing much at all. The Saints, there's a ton of teams that could potentially do that. But yeah, I'd probably say 13-3 is going to get that bye, whoever that team may be.
Yeah, I mean that's been kind of the trend the last couple of years. So I definitely concur with that 100%. So first things first, what are your thoughts on expanding to 7 teams in the playoffs per division? Do you think that's better? Worse?
The 17 game is going to be, it's happening in the next, could be next year, could be 2023. We're going to see how they kind of figure out what they do about that. I think the players made the right choice in getting the CBA done. Now we're done till 2030. A lot of good things happened for them in that. But we'll see how the expanded. I do like the additional teams in the playoffs. The buys are what's tricky. It's nice to have 2 teams coming out of each, NFC and AFC having a bye. I know the Packers loved that last year, the Putzes. And so that's going to be interesting. It'll be weird, but, it should be exciting. The NFL is, the best sport in the world, and more of it can't hurt.
Yeah, really what I think the overall goal for this is to allowing the extra team into the playoffs is to prevent from teams basically not playing the last 2 weeks of the season like the Baltimore Ravens did like last year, and then the Saints didn't, play their final game of the season. Like they basically just want teams to play out the full 16 game season, battling for that number 1 overall seed. So that's what I think the ultimate goal is to that. And of course, allowing an extra team into the playoffs gives you that extra game, extra fan bases. So all eyes on the NFL at the end of the day.
Well, exactly. And now that there's only one bye, they are going to be playing every game trying to get the best record to get that bye, because that's a huge advantage in the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely 100%. So, Mike, thank you for joining us here on Just for Clicks here this afternoon. Guys, at rtfsportsnetwork.com is where you are listening to us right now. Mike, where can people find Twist at?
TwistSportsTalk.com, rtfsportsnetwork.com. All our social media platforms, you can find us at Twist Sports Talk.
All right, Mike, thank you for joining me for this afternoon. Guys, we'll be right back after this break.